Hello, in this video I will be critiquing my own performance of the Sarabande from French Suite No. 5 by JS Bach. You're going to hear what it really takes to bring a piece from being okay, you know the notes, you can get through the piece, to wow, that's really a compelling performance and that's something that really moves me. We're first going to listen to the performance of the piece. It's only about 2 minutes long, and we'll actually do it one section at a time, and then I'm going to go over what I did right, what I did wrong, how I could improve it. Let's talk about it right now. So let's start by listening to this piece. Okay, so some of you guys are probably wondering, why are you using a Thumbpick? So I started playing fingerstyle guitar like 8, 9, 10 years ago, and I was really into Chet Atkins and Tommy Emmanuel, so that's why I used the Thumbpick. Now, one problem that the Thumbpick is presenting in this video is that sometimes when I touch the string, there's a bit of a string noise there. And I have to be very careful when I'm using the Thumbpick. If you look at my left hand here, I'm left-handed. If the string is already vibrating and you touch the string before plucking it again, you hear that? You're hearing quite a bit of that with the Thumbpick because it's very easy to touch the string with the tip of the Thumbpick before actually plucking the string like this. So that's something I'm trying to work out of my playing. One thing I did do well here, I find I keep a pretty good consistent tempo and rhythm throughout the piece. I managed to carry the vibration, the correct vibe of the Sarabande, which is the 3 beats per measure, accent on the second beat. There are some times where I'm not accenting the second beat. There's times where I do one of these things like a chord roll on the wrong beat rather than on the second beat. Overall, I keep the vibe of the Sarabande going pretty well, and I'm able to capture the vibe that I'm looking for pretty well. A few things that I can improve are some minute details. One of them is overall, especially with the intro, I need to work out getting more sustain in the opening bars of the piece and being a little bit more decisive with playing those specific notes. So if you listen right from the beginning again, my intro is a little timid, I would say. but I sort of made up for it. One thing I find is that I'm not striking certain notes with enough power, like that one where I'm going. So if I take it from the top, the way I played it in the video was kind of like this. There's something good about having a clean and clear starting note like this. More decisive, you know? And then you continue with the next one there. So I got to work on being a little bit more decisive with those first few notes in the intro there, and really kind of getting that power started, because at least the first few measures of this piece are quite iconic, the way that it sort of moves through the chord progression. And now once you're onto the part with the C is in the bass and the F sharp like this, I would say one thing that I do need to work on is cross string trills, but also when it comes to the trills that are not cross string, I need to make sure I have enough power behind those trills, because some of them sound weak. And another thing you can do to make those trills easier is obviously cut the nails on your fretboard hand shorter. Right now they're not that short. But one of my weak points is cross string trills, which is something I've only been recently working on. David Russell's the king of cross string trills. But listen to how I play that. That is actually a cross string trill. So just that I could work on for a while. In regards to the fingering for that, there's different ways. I normally just do index middle, but you could do ring index middle, which is an alternate fingering. You can be a little bit more brisk with that. It's called a mordant. When you're on one note, you go down to the next note in the scale and then back up. That's a mordant. There's the same string trill that I would do with 2 fingers rather than 1. Right there, see? We're gonna listen again. Okay, that one where I'm going, that one would definitely sound better with 2 fingers instead of 1. Okay, see what I did right there? I want to point that out, where I am resting on the second beat. Something that I do very well, that I find I'm capturing the right vibration, is where I actually pause for a quick moment on the second beat of the piece. Have a listen to the beat structure from the beginning of the piece. So notice that pause. I'm pausing a bit on the second beat, giving it some air. In a concert hall, this type of piece would really fill up the hall, in my opinion, if you're pausing on the second beat. So there's an example right there, the last note where I played the G. I rolled it, and that's an example where I wouldn't do a roll, because it's the third beat, which is supposed to be a weak beat. And when you roll the chord, when you do, you're accentuating it, because there's a delay there. I would basically play them at the same time. So that is more conclusive when you play them both at the same time. So, bam, end of the phrase, bam, quieter at the end of the phrase, and then you start loud again on the next phrase, or at least mezzo forte. So let's listen from here. So again, quieter towards the end of the phrase, and then obviously an accent or sort of a mezzo forte at the beginning of the phrase, which is already sort of in the music. You don't have to do it, it just happens naturally because the melody goes to a higher note anyways. Okay, right there, thumbpick noise, kind of annoying, but let's keep going. Okay, that little section is quite difficult because it's a descending scale. This is where I'm going to talk about the cut. I learned this by watching David Russell critique the other guy. A cut could be interpreted in different ways, but really it just means stopping the note short. It can also mean, for me, muting the open strings where they're not meant to be played. So we're going... when you play this chord, the B string cannot be ringing anymore. It needs to be silenced somehow. So you need to work on a technique where you mute those open strings. So. There's an example of short, long. So and that's the next phrase. So. This phrase is quite difficult because the melody is a legato, because you're going. So you want to make it sound legato, but also clean. That's what's hard about it. So you're going. Anyways, that's one that I definitely got to work on. Let's keep going. Okay, here's an example that is quite good. So I sort of rushed through that part and I missed 2 of the trills. That's one thing, but overall I got through it and I kept the vibe going. Again, leaving the open G string there doesn't sound that good. It would sound better with a cut like this. Especially if you're in a place where there's a lot of acoustics, you definitely need to have a cut there before you play the. So. You know what I mean? Cut, long. Let's go over the next section. So again, same string trill, probably could do it with 2 fingers, it'll be cleaner. So instead of going, I could do. I also think for the first note of the section, it doesn't sound good with a chord roll. It doesn't sound good if I go. I do that quite a lot. It's a bad habit that I'm trying to work out in my playing. If I do both notes at the same time, I think it'll sound better like this. More decisive. I want a more decisive sound for the start of a phrase. Okay, there's a slide that's sort of undesirable there. Again, right there as well. Just simply lift the hand and go to the next position rather than sliding. Another slide right there. I think I can be a little bit more brisk with the trill. Again, lift the finger just ever so slightly off the fretboard before getting to that position to really remove that undesirable sliding sound. And I do have slightly polished strings, but you still hear the sliding a little bit. The sliding around really doesn't suit this type of piece. The ending is fine. Listen again. Again, the chord rolling on the first beat, again, I'm not a fan of it that much. I want to do more chord rolling on the second beat instead of the first. That last low E was a little loud. It's not a big issue. This next chord here, where we're going... Perfect example of a chord that sounds good when you roll it. It's very lute-like, very guitar-like. In context. Okay, that phrase was probably the best in the whole performance. The only thing I didn't like is the roll on the last C chord. I did a cool little improv line on the G7 going to the C. So when we're going... that roll down is not that compelling. You could play them at the same time. Or maybe you can even do a roll up. I kind of grew up with a metal background and I listened to a lot of black metal, and in black metal they do a lot of descending rolls. So they'll do a roll from the top string to the bottom string. And that's kind of darker in a way. Well, with a minor chord obviously it sounds darker, but with a major chord too, it's in a way it's softer, it's more, think of a word and comment below what it makes you think of the difference between a descending chord roll versus an ascending chord roll. I would say an ascending chord roll is more graceful. It's more like ba-dum, ba-dum, and a descending chord roll is more like da-da-dum, da-da-dum, like it's darker in a way. So I think a descending chord roll would sound better on that C major chord. This section is a little tricky because you got to mute the open B string before playing the cross string trill here. So you're going. It's quite tricky. I might work on a different fingering for that part. That part's all acceptable, I'd say. Okay, that right there, that open B string needs to be muted before you play the C bass note. Put in the blues note. Yeah. Okay, so apart from the extra couple notes I added at the end there, that blues note was interesting. I do think, one thing I've heard some other players do at the end of this piece is, well, they add sort of an improvisational line, like you might hear them do like... I don't know exactly what they do, but they do more notes than what's written in the score. I like the way I did it because I'm pausing on the C chord, so where it goes, we're going. I did it again. I mean, you just want to make it sound musical. It's not an easy passage for sure. I guess you could sort of start it slow and then crescendo into it a bit. The first chord needs to sound like, I'm picturing as if I'm in a concert hall, right? So I'm going. Anyways, there's a few items I'd work out there, like I want to do a better cross string trill. I'm trying to work on my cross string trills, but I want my cross string trills to be nice and brisk, like the way David Russell does them. They sound very brilliant and they sound very clean, so I'm trying to go for that sound. So, I mean, that's how I'm going to critique my performance today. I definitely have to work out a few aspects, mostly related to muting with my fretboard hand. So I have to do cuts before a long note. So when there's a short note and a long note, you're going to cut the short note, make sure no open strings are ringing, and the long notes, it'll kind of accentuate them a little bit more. I have to work on working out some of the noise of my fretboard hand, and I can do that maybe by playing without the thumb pick. I have to stop with the excessive chord rolling, especially on the first beat, and maybe reserve it only for the second beat, and just remove a lot of the chord rolling in general and try to be more decisive with certain passages. Another thing that I think is important is thinking about when the phrases start and end, because it is sort of a very vocal piece. So decisive from the beginning, you know. You can still be soft and decisive. My intro is soft, but it's not very decisive. Because I'm going, here's a bass note, here's a melody note. I can't tell if it's meant to be on the same beat or not. Really, it should be. Obviously with a little bit more power behind that. So you have to mute the open G like that. Difficult one right there. Might even do a bar to make this easier, like. I was reading through another David Russell score, and he has a lot of markings in his score for bars. So I might actually decide to bar where I'm doing this C chord right here. Because otherwise, if I'm like this, there's a good chance I hit an open string that's not part of the chord, when in reality that chord is a D major over C. So if I actually bar and if I actually play the chord, even if the notes are not in the chord, let me know what you guys thought of this critique, and let me know if you have any particular critiques for my performance as well. I will see you in the next video. Hope you liked it. Leave a like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Cheers.